Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I'm going to show you guys easily the most accessible currency making strategy for anyone starting out or just anyone trying to make some good sustainable currency. So if you're trying to make, 1 or 2x an hour, this is the video for you. You can do it with any character, at any point after you get to maps, and all you need is just a tiny amount to get started, but there's not going to be any crazy investment like go buy this 2 Exalt Watchstone or anything like that. All you need to do is buy an X item to run, you run that item, you get the money back, and do it over and over and over again. So it's fairly simple, it's nice, consistent, and there's not going to be any difficult stuff to sell. So if you're one of those guys who doesn't have anything but a currency stash tab, this may be a pretty good strategy for you, so let's get into it. I'm going to take you through step by step. But of course, everyone wants to know, how much can I make? Is this thing actually good? So let's get into the results. So big spoiler here, what I'm going to be showing you guys is how to run contracts effectively and which ones are good to run. So we're going to start out with lockpicking contracts. Again, I'll give you the step-by-step in a second here, but essentially I ran 100 lockpicking contracts with 0 heist member investment. I just leveled them up to the max level, and this was what I earned. So I bought lockpicking contracts for about 400C each, 4C each, which equals about 400C for the 100 of them. And I also spent 100C worth of road markers on this test. And you can see here, I earned 1,317 chaos in pretty much liquid currency and items. The only thing in here which wouldn't sell potentially immediately and easily is the sacrificial fragments. They do sell in bulk and you do get bulk, but of course you could exclude those and you'd probably earn something like 1,250 instead of the 1,300. So let's go with the 1,250 number. So I invested 500, so 500 divided by 1,250. So I earned, that's actually wrong, 1,250 divided by 500. There you go. I earned 2.5 times my money doing this experiment. So if you have 50C and you invest it, on average, you should get 2.5 times that money back just from running contracts. And this is a very quick way to multiply your money. And this actual experiment to run the 100 contracts took me about 2.5 hours. So if you're just, if you got like a couple hours to play, you can bang out some contracts and you can make some really good currency and you don't need to spend a considerable amount of time selling obscure items. So let's get into the how now that you know whether or not this is something that you want to do. So without further ado, let's get into it. So all you're going to need to start off with is you're going to need some road markers. I'd recommend probably getting about 10 to 20,000 if you can. But you can start off with 2 or 3,000 if you need, or maybe you have some lying around. If you just don't have much currency to get started, buy 2 or 3,000. It's okay to start out small, sell the items, and then start to ratchet it up and ramp it up. You will notice that you start multiplying your currency and it's very difficult not to make your money back from these contracts. So you're going to pop a road market, you're going to head over to the road harbor. And the member that we're going to be using for this experiment is Cast. So Cast, fortunately for us, is one of the road members that you start off with at the very beginning. Cast, all you're going to need to do is first of all level him up to level 5 so that he's eligible to complete any lockpicking contract. You can level up a heist member by simply doing contracts with them over and over again, and that's just going to give them XP, and you need to go to the end of the contract, pick up the target, and then run back to the start, and that completes it and gets them a lot of experience. It takes anywhere between 7 to 9 contracts to level up a member. Now, when you're buying contracts, and I'll show you how to buy them in bulk in a second, you want to look for 81 plus, and that's going to yield the best currency and item drop rewards. So make sure the contracts you're buying are 81 plus, and again, I'll show you how to buy them in a second here. So you need to get Cast to level 5. You can also look into using different heist members for different contracts, which yield different rewards and have different returns, but that's more advanced stuff that we'll get to in the end of the video. Okay, so you can see here that I do have an item on my Cast, but it actually does nothing but speed up the time in which he opens doors. We'll get to that when we get to the min-maxing section. But for starters, all you need to level up is level up Cast to level 5, and then you need to acquire some contracts. Okay, so in order to acquire contracts, all you're going to need to do is either self-farm them using the Zana map device and the nodes over here in Lirathane. That is an option. It's going to yield a bunch of contracts per map. It's also going to yield a bunch of road markers. But the smarter way to do it, if you just want to make money right now and you don't have maps to burn and you don't want to worry about all that kind of stuff like that, is to go over to the Forbidden Trove and go to the bulk item exchange. Okay, so the Forbidden Trove is a Discord server which allows players to trade massive amounts of obscure items, essentially. And I would describe heist items as obscure items. And this is the best way to buy and sell contracts if you're interested. So right now we want to buy lockpicking contracts, or we want to post an ad to let people know that we're trying to purchase them. So if you wanted to buy them, you can go over here into the bulk, want to buy USC. And then you can Control F and you can go lockpicking. Okay, and you can see here, oh, that's actually that people wanting to buy them. Let's go over to want to sell. Sorry about that, guys. So lockpicking. So if we take a look here, so this guy's 47 lockpickings for 5C. This guy's got 14. This guy's got 31 for 4C. That's a pretty good price. That's what I bought mine at, for example. This guy's got 5C. 5C, you know, so it looks like this guy's got 27 for 4C. Looks like the going rate is anywhere between 4 to 5C. Now, a good tip for you guys, though, is that if you go to want to sell, you're a buyer going to a seller, they're going to charge you a premium. But if you go to want to buy and you post an ad, people are going to give you the premium because they're getting to offload their items very quickly. So you can get a better price on contracts that you purchase using TFT when you post an advertisement instead of going to someone else. So as I showed before, you know, people are buying lockpicking contracts right now. They're posting advertisements. You can see here, this guy's buying them for 2C each, 3C each, 3C each. And these guys are going to be making a significantly higher margin per 100 lockpicking contracts that they run. And I'd recommend posting an ad if you can, possibly for the contract that you want to run instead. So when you go to one of these people and buy their contracts, or you post an ad and someone comes to you, now you'll have a significant amount of contracts to run. You've got a level 5 cast. You can also look into using Talina. She does also actually drop a refund for road markers in the form of items which you can sell to the fence, which is pretty good. But she can only do up to level 4. So, you know, Talina's pretty good, but cast is a pretty universal option, and you can level him up, and it's going to be fairly awesome. Okay, so next up, you want to put in your contract, make sure you got some rogue markers, and you'll notice here that it takes about 400 rogue markers to activate a contract. This is fairly important. 400 rogue markers is about 1C worth of rogue markers, and you should just add that onto your cost of the price here. So, you know, obviously, so you bought a contract for 4C using 1C worth of rogue markers, that's 5 chaos that you've invested now. Let's see if we make our money back. So of course, the rewards in Heist are RNG. Each different contract has a different archetype of rewards attached to it. For example, lockpicking gives you fragments, which includes scarabs, elder fragments, elder fragments, shaper fragments, uber fragments, and sacrificial fragments, as well as the currency reward. Something like demolition, which we'll show you guys in a second here, gives you the delirium rewards, the metamorph rewards, and also the... it slips my mind, I can't remember what the third one is, but we'll get to that in a minute. So you open up the map and you can kind of see the lay of the land here and see what kind of currency or item rewards that you're going to be offered. So right now we have 3 rewards in this one here. We have the currency reward and the 2 jewelry rewards here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the currency reward here because I'm not a big fan of jewelry. You can open them and they can yield synthesized bases. They can yield, you know, shaper and elder bases and all sorts of stuff like that. I'm not the biggest fan of them though, so I open only the currency ones. So I'm going to open up this currency chest here, and we'll take a look what we got. So we got, you know, 2 chaos orbs, a gem cutter prism, and, you know, some other stuff there. So I actually got fairly unlucky on my rolls here. That's okay though. So when you open up all the chests, which the big chests, which you're looking to do, you can go ahead and then open up all these other lockers, and they're also going to give you some more loot to kind of take home as well. So you got a fusing all there. You can run through here all the way around, and you can pick up all these chests in here, and then you can just hightail it out the door. That's what I like to do. Okay, got some essences of contempt there. There's like 1C each. Go open that one there. And then generally, I never like to fill up the bar, and there's a good reason for that. So in Heist, if you die right now, you're going to drop all of your items because they're considered contraband. And that's okay though. If you haven't got the alert bar full, then you can go ahead and head out and then head back in and pick up all your items because you haven't triggered the alert. Now, if you were to complete the heist, for example, when you're leveling up your rogues, you're going to have to complete the heist. If you die after completing the heist on the way out, then you're actually going to lose all of the loot that you picked up. And that's why you come in here, you loot the chests, and then you just run out. And that makes it incredibly accessible for all characters. And also, it means that you don't have to deal with any of the doors on the way out of the heist, which is super duper awesome. and you don't have to like spend as much time. So it takes me anywhere between a minute and a minute and a half to complete a contract on average, and you know, that's a pretty good time. You can do, you know, anywhere between like, you know, 35 to 60 of these an hour, and it's pretty sweet. So we didn't make money on that one, unlucky. But you know, you have to run a few of these things to be able to get the average. So that one was definitely below average. Let's take a look here. We'll take a look at this contract here. So I personally like to run all my contracts white, as it doesn't actually impact the rewards at all to do so, and it also makes them a little bit more safe and it makes it a less chance of you dying. So let's open up this one now here. We got pretty much broke even, I would say, on this one here. We got, you know, 3 fusings and all sorts of stuff like that. But that is, you know, not too bad there. We'll jump in this one. We'll run it really quick and see what we got. So we got 2. Oh, we only got 1 currency again. That is unlucky. But, you know, generally, you can expect to get, I think it's about 40% of the time you get a currency chest. That's the weighting. It's about a 40% chance to get a jewelry chest, and then it is a 20% chance to get a fragment chest, around about that area. So yeah, we're gonna open this one up here, jump in here, and we'll crack this chest open. So yeah, you may get unlucky enough, but oh, we got an exalted shard. Hey man, that's not too bad. So you can of course get stacks of exalted shards, as you just saw there. And that is obviously going to be a pretty sweet gravy train as well. And we'll get into the exact things that you can expect moving forward here. So we're going to open up all these chests on the way out here and make sure that we get the maximum amount of loot. And make sure we jump out here real quick. You know, not too bad there. Okay, so we'll jump out here now. So I would describe those 2 heists as below average, but you know, it's okay. We made money still in the form of, you know, exalted shard and some other pure currency items which we can sell to some other players. Now, of course, we're not looting the end result there, and that means that we're, you know, spending money on rogue markers. You can, if you're more confident in your character, loot that end reward, and you will also accumulate blueprint reveals, which you can then use to scale into more advanced currency making strategies that we'll discuss at the end here. But you can see here, this is very easy content. There's not a lot of monsters that can get in your way and slay you, and you just run in and you open some chests. So I think it's a fairly accessible strategy. All you need to do is level up the rogue and then also get some contracts and you're online. So let's go back to the overall loot that you can expect here. So let's break down kind of what you're looking at here. So in this test here, you can see I almost got almost 2 exalted orbs, and that's purely from exalt shards. I actually didn't get any pure exalted orb drops in my 100 lockpicking contracts, which I think is you know, fairly reasonable. We did get a ton of scarabs in this test. You can see all these scarabs here, and the more scarabs that you accumulate, the higher price you can actually demand for them when you're selling them to other players, because they'll buy them in bulk. And you know, if you have 8 metamorph scarabs, you can probably sell these for a higher price, which is pretty awesome. You know, even if you sell them for the minimum amount of price, you know, it's not too bad, and you can kind of get away with selling them for the price that you see here. So pretty awesome there. And then obviously you also have other things like the odd it's Uber Zeri fragment that you get here. You know, we got these out of the fragment chests. You know, those are worth a considerable amount of currency as well. Okay, so I've introduced you to the basics, and you can run lockpicking contracts. You know, I would advise not buying them too expensive. Try and buy them for 4-ish C, and that's going to net you a pretty good profit. Obviously, you can see how much I made. It was 1300 chaos. This is basically baseline. This test actually wasn't opening any of the small chests, which you saw me open in those in that example, because I wanted to give you the objective lowest amount that you could expect. This also wasn't using any rogue gear, which we'll go into in a second here, and that can also amp up the amount of currency returns you're getting. So this is basically 1300 is on average probably the minimum you can expect overall doing lockpicking contracts, and as you increase the amount you buy the lockpicking contracts for, that is going to further and further eat into your profit margin. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're buying your contracts. That goes for every contract you're buying. Do not pay too much for them, otherwise, you know, you're just hurting yourself in the long run. Okay, so let's get into some other spicy info. So of course, let's get into the different types of contracts first. So I've introduced you guys to the basics, but there is, I think, 9 or 10 different types of contracts that you can run. There's perception, deception, trap disarmament, you know, brute force, and all sorts of stuff like that. And a lot of them yield different results and have different rewards associated with them. You know, so there's like fossils, maps, essences, all sorts of stuff like that. And they can all be, you know, various different kind of levels of profit and you can experiment with them yourself. So let's get into another one that I ran here though, which is a little bit more advanced. So the thing that makes the lockpicking ones really, really useful is if you don't have many currency stash tabs, any stash tabs at all, and you just have a currency stash tab, this is the perfect one for you. You don't have to list anything for sale really, apart from like maybe some scarabs, and that's going to be super accessible. You don't need any crazy amount of quad tabs or anything like that. But if you're willing to go a little bit, out of your comfort zone, and you're willing to tackle, selling some maps, or selling some, catalysts and stuff like that, you can also go for demolition. So I ran 100 demolitions to show you guys the results of that as well. And we'll take a look at that, and it's actually got a much higher profit margin on it than the lockpicking contracts, which is pretty cool. And I'll show you guys kind of why that is, and how to extract that profit here in just a second. So we'll move into that now. So these are the 3 tabs that have my loot from 100 demolition contracts. So we'll jump into that here. So you can see here I made about 1,681 chaos. Of stuff that I've sold already, but there's a considerable amount of stuff that I haven't sold yet, which I want to show off to you guys, and you can kind of see. So the main 3 reward types from the demolition contracts are in fact Metamorph, Delirium, and also Blight. So Blight drops blighted scarabs and oils, as well as maps enchanted with blight on them. So maps enchanted with blight on them are essentially a map which contains a blight in it. So it's a pseudo blighted scarab. These can be used with horizon orbs on them, and it can actually be fairly difficult to find a buyer for these. But if you do sell them, they sell for a fairly nice amount, like 3 or 4C. But finding a buyer for them can be difficult. But if you do, then you can extract a lot of extra currency from this specific contract type. So it does kind of provide an opportunity for those players. In addition to that, from the Delirium chest, it drops Delirium enchanted maps. So these are maps with inbuilt Delirium orbs on them. Delirium orbs are very, very expensive right now. So if you can find someone willing to buy these Delirium based maps, either on the Forbidden Trove, the TFT Discord server I showed you at the beginning, or some other players that that can also be fairly lucrative. So you can see here, these are chaos orbs that I have accumulated from selling the Delirium based maps. And then I've also got some chaos orbs I accumulated from selling the blight enchanted maps to some other players. Now, there also is the Metamorph. Metamorph drops both catalysts as well as Metamorph scarabs. So that's kind of the demolition breakdown of the loot. And let's talk a little bit about how much money that you can be looking at and where that money's coming from. So obviously there's a lot of non-liquid currency items here. So selling those Delirium maps and the Metamorph, and the blighted maps is going to be very important. A lot of money came from that. So you can also, include that or exclude that. And you can see here, I still have some left to sell of those. But then another thing that you can look at here is cluster Joules. You're going to accumulate a large number of cluster Joules, and a lot of your profit will depend on selling these. And if you do sell them for the correct price, you can accumulate a lot more currency that you've seen me show off in that 16 to 1700 chaos profit that I showed there. So if you take a look, some of these are worth a lot of money. So this one here, for example, is worth 40 chaos, and a lot of these are worth 25 to 40 chaos as well. Some cluster Joules are actually worth anywhere between 1 to 2 exalts. So you can, make a ton of currency from farming cluster Joules in the demolition contracts as well. So demolition contracts right now, I bought mine for 3 chaos. Obviously, you got that 1C road marker cost, which you can factor in as well. So I would estimate that I probably made about 2,100 chaos after I sold all of the cluster Joules, as well as the remaining Delirium maps. So if you take a look here, that's obviously just a guess. If you look at the excellence right now, it says 1,700, but I indeed do have more things to sell, as I just showed you. These are all very valuable cluster Joules, so I would guess, let's just say 2,000, very, very conservatively, 2,000 chaos. So basically, and I spent 300, and then another 100. So it's actually 1,600 because I accidentally hit enter twice there. So it would be 1,600 over 400. So I 4 times my money doing demolition contracts. Again, they take about the same amount of time, but there is a little quirk here. The rogue that you use for demolition is in fact Vindiri. So Vindiri actually has a 16% chance if you get him to level 6. But normally he has a 14% chance to duplicate loot and their contents, meaning that's a 14% more loot multiplier. And you should be using Vindiri for any contract type that you can get your hands on him in, and that's going to give you more loot multiplier, which is pretty good. All right, so now that you've established, there's different types of contracts you can run. They all yield pretty good profit results. How do you get into min-maxing this? How can you take this to the next level? Well, there's two things that you can look into. Of course, I did allude to the fact that you can use reveals on blueprints. That's definitely a more advanced tactic, and it will yield you anywhere between 10 to 20 exalts in a play session, assuming it's about a 4-hour play session, I would assume. There's massive rewards in blueprints, but we're talking about contracts right now. Contracts do feed into the blueprint kind of loop of progression, but we'll talk about that in another video. So if you want to min-max your currency from contracts, what can you look into doing? So you can get some more reduced raising of alert level. This is essentially going to allow you to open additional small chests and additional large chests in some cases as well. In your contracts, that's going to make the alert bar go up less, and the more chests you can loot before you get close to the top, obviously that's going to mean you get more loot per contract, which is pretty awesome. That's not going to drastically improve your loot results though. The main thing that's going to improve your loot results is in fact getting a thief's trinket. So not a thief's trinket, a brooch for your rogue. And you can see here, this one is that I put on cast. Sometimes I didn't put it on cast for the actual test because I want it to be objective without any bells and whistles. But this one here means that heist chests have 15% chance to duplicate contained basic currency. So this is pretty good. Basically 15% more currency rewards, and that there is actually a modifier on these brooches for pretty much any type of loot in heist. There's one for scarabs, catalyst, delirium rewards, all sorts of stuff like that. So you can pick and choose which reward that you would like to prioritize multiplying, which is pretty awesome. Another thing you can look into is getting a Thief's Trinket with some cool mods on them. So this one here actually says that it's got a 3% chance in heists for Regal Orbs to drop as Exalted Orbs. Now, unfortunately, I didn't drop many Regal Orbs in my test, so this is actually not a very potent modifier. I only dropped 26 Regal Orbs, but I wasn't using that either for the test, by the way. But you can also look into perhaps one that converts Chaos Orbs into Exalted Orbs, and maybe that's a better pick, as I did actually in fact drop well over 100 Chaos Orbs. So if you had like a 1 or 2% chance for Chaos Orbs to drop as Exalted Orbs, that in theory would have been able to skyrocket your profit margins from lockpicking contracts, which would have been pretty damn awesome. So yeah, there's lots of different options, and you can gear up your rogues according to your goals. There is also another one, which is it reduces the rogue market cost for your rogues to enter the actual contract, which overall can reduce your expenses by a tiny amount. Maybe it reduces your 100 rogue market cost per 100 contracts to 80 or 70 chaos per 100, which is more money in the bank, and it will eventually get you over the line. Ultimately though, if you're looking to make the big bucks, you should experiment with different types of contracts to see which one gives you the best profit margins. And you should also look into advancing eventually into doing blueprints, as blueprints is where the real money in heist lies, and it is going to earn you enough money to go buy your headhunter and stuff like that. This is intended to be a preliminary kind of very early days strategy to double or triple your money very easily with low investment and anything anyone can do. So it's intended to get you up to your first chase item, which might be a 6-link shavs or something like that. This is a very good strategy for that. Moving forward though, if you wanted to farm up a Mirror of Calandra or a Headhunter, you should transition into looking into blueprints, which maybe I make a video on if enough people are interested in after this one. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video on heist. I know it's pretty basic, but it does give you the general idea of how to do it, how to make currency from it, and how much you can expect. Make sure you don't overpay for your contracts. I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure you subscribe and like if you actually liked the video. Until next time, cheers.